Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Pleased to have with me back again on the show, uh, regular guest host Ernie Quiroz. Welcome to the show, Ernie.
Hey, thanks for having me always. Thank you. Thank you.
And Ernie is back after a very busy September where he got to live the life, the dream life that we film snobs all dream of, and got to go to both the Telluride Film Festival and Toronto. And he's in a brief respite here back home in Phoenix before he then heads off to Tucson for the Loft Film Festival at the gorgeous Loft Cinema in Tucson. So I appreciate you making some time in your brief sojourn in between film festivals, Ernie, to be with us.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. Always happy to talk about films. And this is the exciting time of year to start talking about
Yes,
film.
fall is especially for you going to film festivals in the theaters right now. It's kind of like wah wah. Like September is always this time for like seeing all these things you're getting to see, and I'm like, oh, soon, soon it'll be in my hands, but not yet. September,
You
it's
mean we're
my
not going to talk about Expendables 4?
yeah, or the Blue Beetle, or I mean, that might have been one of the better things out, but no, we're not. Although it tanked, so I'm hoping that that means they're done at least for a while before
Expend
these.
Fordables or whatever.
Right, until they're wheeling around. Sorry, that was very ageist, but you know what I mean. It's just like these guys are getting a little long in the tooth for these action movies. So you are going to tell us about the Telluride Film Festival, I think, which was the first kind of big one you went to, and you got and it was the 50th. Yes, do you have the
50th.
50th brochure?
I don't know
So
that it's
big
going to end
one.
up backwards mirrored, but here's my guide to refresh my memory of the
Yeah, it's
festival.
good because now you have Toronto on top of it, so your brain, it's probably all of a haze of what you saw where,
Yeah,
probably at this point. But that's okay. We're going to mix and match. You're going to tell people about what they can look forward to that's going to be coming to the theaters, and also probably the movies that are the hot buzz that kind of be for award season this year because
for sure,
you know
for
you
sure. Yeah, there was
yeah.
some overlap of between the two festivals. I watched 51 movies in about 12 days worth of watching. So it was a lot of movies. Most of these that I'm going to talk about, yeah, these are all going to be the big buzzy stuff, Oscar stuff. They're going to be in the fall. They already have release dates, so you can go watch them. Some of the ones I watched that I won't talk about, they're who knows, they might be a year or more. Those are ones that I'm watching kind of for work, but I'm going to focus on the fun ones that are coming soon. How did
The
you want
buzzy
to
ones. The
how
buzzy
did you want
ones.
to do
Yeah.
this?
Well, let's first talk about let's set the stage here because this is a weird year because of the strike, right? The Actors Guild strike. There weren't as many celebrities out and about, which probably wasn't too big of a deal at Telluride because Telluride's not paparazzi driven anyway, but you would have probably had fewer actors there to talk about their films. But we're film snobs. We really care about the directors anyway, for the most part. And I assume directors were there this year. I know at Telluride, they were doing tributes to Wim Wenders and Alice Rohrmacher, among others. So tell me about how that went and what
Yeah.
the overall atmosphere was at the festival.
Yeah, it was a little different. I think I noticed it more at Toronto because that is, they do have a lot of red carpets, and that's a big sort of glitzy glamour. The studios use that as their big sort of, splashy premiere to get all the press.
Right.
Telluride is a little more low key. It's interesting that there were a lot of actors making their directorial debut, and I don't know if this was just timing or if this was because of the thing. So Ethan Hawke directed a movie, Anna
Hmm.
Kendrick directed a movie, Chris Pine. I mean, there are at least five or six different actors who make the directorial debut. So a lot of them were there, and they were participating in Q&As because they could talk as a director. They can't talk
As an
about being an
actor.
actor. Some of them acted in their own movies. So like Anna Kendrick, so she talked about directing the movie, but couldn't talk about about acting in the movie. It's very schizophrenic, very odd. Yeah.
Very interesting. I did not realize she had directed one. I did know about Ethan Hawke's movie, which I saw got kind of mixed reviews. I don't know if you saw that one. And then Unfortunately, I've been seeing some of the reviews coming out about Chris Pine's one. Yowza, not great reviews for Chris
Yeah, I
Pine there.
saw I saw all of those. So the Ethan Hawke, it's called Wildcat. It's his daughter's in it, produced it. It's, the life story, based on the life and writings of Flannery O'Connor. It was just
Hmm.
okay. It wasn't that great. Uh, the Anna Kendrick movie was a lot of fun. That I think Netflix picked it up. Probably won't be out for another year or so. I don't think it's going to get any sort of Oscar push, so they're going to delay it for years. It was Woman of the Hour. It was
Isn't
okay.
that
It was a very
comedy?
odd story. It's a comedy.
Oh, okay.
It's about this serial killer serial rapist. This is a true story in the 70s, who sort of in the middle of his spree that sort of lasted a couple of years, goes on the dating game, and someone in the audience while they're taping it recognizes him, that he attacked her friend, and sort of alerts authorities, but the authorities don't do anything about it, and basically ends up going free, to terrorize more women. And it's based on a true story. It's very, very interesting, very odd. The film didn't quite land for me, but very interesting premise. That's Woman of
Yeah,
the
the
Year.
story
Netflix put
sounds
it.
like
Yeah,
something you would want to make a movie out of for sure. And then
yeah.
you saw the Chris Pine one as well?
I saw about a half hour. I could only take about a half hour of it. It's terrible. It's sort of he plays a pool man, and he's sort of a noirish LA noir, sort of a take on a Big Lebowski or Chinatown type thing,
Uh,
but nowhere near as clever, funny, or as well written as those films. It was just terrible. Danny DeVito, Annette Bening are in it, and it's nothing.
yeah, it's getting hammered. Yeah.
A friend of mine watched the whole thing, and he only stayed because he thought it was fun watching everyone leave. It was just this constant stream of people leaving during the entire film.
He might keep it to
And
his day job there, Chris Pine. Not every actor should be a director. Maybe that's what
yeah,
that's telling us. Maybe he was
um,
going for kind of a different type of vibe. But let's talk about the movies you really liked. So let's
yeah. Let's talk
start
about the
with
good
maybe
ones.
yeah, let's talk about your favorites.
So let's start with my absolute favorite, and this actually saw the last day at Telluride, and that's the Wim Wenders movie, Perfect Days. And this is actually, I think it'll be my favorite film of the year. And it's already, oddly, a German filmmaker in his Japanese Oscar selection. So this is very much a very low key, slow cinema. This was sort of his tribute to Japanese director Ozu. And this is basically just sort of this life story of this man, this middle-aged man who cleans toilets. Like that's his job, is to go around and clean the public toilets. And you just sort of see his daily routine, and sort of the interactions with some of his coworkers and some of the people that he has his little route that he cleans all the toilets every day, and he has his own his little routine. He eats his
Hmm.
lunch in the park, and it's just you just are able to witness this man, and sort of who finds the little joys and the little things in life, and that's really what it's about. It's just a very quiet, simple, easy film, straightforward. You do get to see his backstory, and understand how he came to have this job, which is the real heart of the story. But this is the kind of movie where just him sort of like staring at the shadow and light playing through the leaves. That's a major plot point. Is
Right,
just him
right.
looking at this
So
light and
probably not going to
shadow.
be a
Yeah.
huge hit by any stretch of the imagination. But what was it that you compelled you so much? I don't know if you're a huge Wim Wenders fan in general. He hasn't made anything in a while, I think,
He
unless.
hasn't made it in a long time. Yeah. What kind of blew me away about it is, like, again, this is my last day at Telluride that I saw this film, and there were a lot of these big splashy films. I saw the Alexander Payne movie, which was him and Paul Giamatti, reuniting after 20 years of Sideways. There was the Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Poor Things, and there was Emerald Fennell's new movie Saltburn, which was sort of like this class conscious thriller type thing. So there's all these big showy films, and there was Annette Bening in this movie called Naiad, where she's like swimming. It's like 48 hours straight to swim from Cuba to Florida. So these big performances and these big flashy movies and all these big things. And then here comes Vin Wenders, and he's like, I'm gonna make this movie about a guy that cleans toilets. and
Hmm.
this is going to blow everything away. This is going to be more riveting than all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it seems like it's getting more buzz now because someone mentioned to me, I think that it maybe showed at Cannes Film Festival and it got, nobody was really talking about it in the media at least. And then after Telluride, and then I think it also went to Toronto, maybe it really started to build buzz. And I wonder if it's because it can get lost in that kind of
exactly. No,
glam,
it.
especially at a place like Venice or Cannes
Mhm.
where it's much more, the big,
And
shocking
that's what
images
I.
make more of a
The one
splash.
thing about Telluride I really do like is that it's a very small slate of films, one about 40 films. It's about a 4-day festival. This year was 5 because of the 50th anniversary, but usually, so it's a very tight, compact schedule. Toronto is over 200 films and it's like 10 days long. So it's easy for films to get lost in the shuffle. But when you have a small, concentrated festival like Telluride is, that's where these films that just, again, a very small, quiet film can sort of find its audience and resonate and sort of, take off in the media.
Yeah. And do you know Perfect Days got picked up
Yeah,
or
that's
is
a
he show?
Neon, and I think it's going to be coming
Oh,
out
good.
either in November or December. Yeah. So and then obviously depending on the
This year.
Oscar,
Oh, good.
like I said, it's Japanese Oscar submission, and I wouldn't be surprised if it got was one of the nominees.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else? Let's see. Oh, you mentioned Poor Things. Let's
So
want to
Poor
talk about
Things,
that
that's
one.
the Yorgos Lanthimos. That was if you talk about the complete opposite of terms of bombastic filmmaking. If you know Yorgos Lanthimos, you're in for a treat. That same sort of very dry humor. But this is in terms of production design, I think this puts Wes Anderson to shame. I mean, this is like
Oh, wow.
A Terry Gilliam type sort of fantasy world. Um, and Emma Stone, I think career defining performance. I think she's definitely going to get an Oscar nomination again. Um, Mark Ruffalo, eh, a comedic turn that we definitely need to see more comedic Mark Ruffalo. So basically, the story is sort of a takeoff on the Frankenstein story. Emma Stone is this woman. It takes place it's no real defined era or time or place. It's just sort of like this generic 1800s England fantasy world, but kind of
Hmm.
like in that time era. So she plays a woman who was pregnant. She commits suicide. Willem Dafoe is the Frankenstein doctor who finds her Emma Stone, she's dead, physically dead. Her baby is still alive. So what he decides to do is take the brain of her unborn child and put it into her body, into her adult body. So here's Emma Stone, adult Emma Stone, basically with the brain of a baby, of a child, and it's her coming of age, her discovery, and learning about the world, which turns very sexual and it becomes a very sexual awakening, but also this undercurrent of female empowerment. It's a very bizarre movie to sort of describe,
You mean like
but it's
every
just a
Yorgos Lanthimos film?
like every Yorgos Lanthimos movie. And it does sort of navigate some trickiness because when you think about like a baby, you think about an adult woman having sex with the brain of a baby or a brain of, the issues of consent and sort of like things like that.
Yeah, I wondered about that because,
He's
like,
able to navigate that pretty well, and he's able to sort of balance that trickiness. It's funny, it's very sexually graphic. It's like I said, production design is amazing. It's a very much female empowerment movie. It's not going to be to everyone's taste.
none of his films
Uh,
are.
it was the volunteer screening, which meant a lot of older volunteers ended up walking out of the film, while the
Hmm.
younger volunteers really appreciated it and really liked it. So take that for what it's worth.
So because I've seen all of his films, I think most of them at least. But I feel like his films have actually gotten a little bit more, I won't say conservative, that's not quite the words, but I would say if you look at his early stuff compared to his last film, The Favorite seemed a little bit more classic, a little safer than
Oh
The
yeah,
Lobster, and then the films before that even less safe. So would you say this one is more in line with like his earlier
Oh
craziness or
no,
more like The
I think you're
Favorite?
actually I think you're 100% right. Despite it being very very much a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. It's definitely the most accessible film. I think that's the term that I want to use, is that it's really more accessible than say Dogtooth
Right. Dogtooth is the one I always bring up because that's the
or
one
The
I watched
Lobster.
it
Yeah,
after The Lobster, and I was just like, "What? This guy was even crazier before The
yeah,
Lobster." So
yeah.
yeah.
So he's gotten a little more. I wouldn't say maybe mainstream is not quite the word. I don't feel like he's sold out. I just feel like maybe he's maybe toned down maybe some of the shock value of the
A
films
little bit,
and has
yeah.
kind of gotten more accessible. But
Well, and
I
he's
do
got bigger
think,
budgets now too.
yeah,
So
bigger budgets, bigger stars, and in English. So, but my hope is, I think if you're a Lanthimos fan, you're gonna like this, and if you're not a Lanthimos fan, then you need to be, and you need to go back and watch his other movies.
yeah, good. Okay, so what else?
Real quick, I did see Anatomy of a Fall. That's the French film,
And that won
which
the Palme d'Or, right?
won the Palme d'Or, and surprisingly was just a couple days ago. Is not the French submission to the Oscar. People were kind of shocked by that.
Oh,
But
really?
this is sort of a court procedural. It's about a family. This middle-aged man and woman, where the man, there's an argument. He ends up falling from a second story balcony and dies. But there's a question of like, did she push him off? Was it suicide? Was it an accident? And we, the audience, we don't know because we don't see, we're not
So
given
sort of
all
a
the
mystery a
information.
bit.
It's a mystery. The only witness was their, I think, like 8-year-old son who is blind, so he only heard it. So he's sort of an unreliable witness. So it did kind of remind me, in a lot of ways, of Ashghar Farhadi film, of where truth, even the idea of truth, is sort of subjective,
Mm-hmm.
and the more information you know, sometimes the less you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes your perspective changes. Like, okay, well, this definitely happened, and then more information was revealed that completely changes your view. So it's a film that I think sort of transcends, courtroom and sort of procedurals, in the sense that it goes into deeper issues of like truth, subjectivity, and all those things.
That sounds great. What do you know what ended up getting the French submission instead of it?
Oh,
I'm
it's
surprised since it won the Cannes
Portofeu,
Film Festival.
Taste of Things. It's called Portofeu.
Oh,
It
okay.
played at Cannes, which I have not seen. So,
Okay.
and then I do want to
Okay.
mention
Tell me
that
more.
in Anatomy of Fall, I can't remember her name. Oh, Sandra Hüller. Sandra Hüller, who was people would recognize her from Tony Erdmann. She was
Oh,
Tony Erdmann in that movie. So she's in this movie. She does a great performance.
she's German though, right?
She's German, but she also speaks French and English. It's really,
Oh,
yeah.
good career move for her. She has
She
some
is
things to choose from.
also she is also in the movie Zone of Interest, which is the Jonathan Glazer movie,
Oh, which is another one of your favorites.
which
Yeah.
was
And I was
another
excited to
great
see, is this
film.
his first film since Under the Skin?
Yes, yes, and this is a A24 film. It's going to be coming out, I think, pretty fairly shortly. So this is the one, Zone of Interest. This is about the camp commandant of Auschwitz, who they live right next door to Auschwitz. I mean, their back wall is like the back wall that is onto
Oh, I
Auschwitz.
think I heard about this movie. This is the family that lived next door, and they're
Yeah,
just like, is it kind of a horror movie, but kind of not type of thing?
it's
Or
it's horror in the sense that you know, here's the thing. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen movies about the Holocaust. This sort of finds a new entry point into the topic of where you're seeing this. It's mostly following the patriarch, the father of the family, he's almost like a company guy. He has his job, and
which is working
he's
at Auschwitz. Yeah.
who happens to be running the Auschwitz, but he's worried about a promotion. He's worried about doing well for his bosses, and then she's the mother, and so she has all the other concerns of like the making out the dinners for the week and getting the kids off to school and all these sort of just these banal family issues, but they just happen to be basically running Auschwitz, and it's always there in the background. Like you'll see the wall of the camp in the background. You'll see the barbed wire. You might see smoke coming out, and you know what that smoke means. Uh, in
So
the
it sounds
sound.
horrifying. Yeah.
It's exactly, and what makes it so horrifying is that for whatever reason, they like this is their normal life, this is their routine, and you start to think like, are these evil people? Like, could anybody do this? Like these are just normal people, and you would never think that they're not evil. They don't look evil,
They're
and
just a
that's the scary
family.
thing. That's the really
But that's what
scary
he's
thing.
pointing out, right? Like the ideas they're pointing out, like we are all complicit. Like you just kind of go about
Yes.
doing things on your day-to-day life without
Hmm.
questioning or yeah, that's incredible. And who is the director of that one?
That's Jonathan Glazer.
Jonathan
Like
Glazer. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So interesting because he's not he's is he British or I'm trying to remember,
I
but it's
think
a
I think
French.
he is British. I think he is
Yeah.
British.
But
Yeah.
it's a French is it's a done in English or French or
It's English and German. Yeah,
German? Okay, yeah,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
So real quick, totally changing gears. Alexander Payne, Holdovers. This is a new film with Paul Giamatti reuniting after 20 years after from Sideways. This was just sort of Alexander Payne, kind of stumbled with his last film, so this is a good return to form. Uh, Paul Giamatti sort of played a Paul Giamatti character, sort of this schlubby, sort of English teacher who
Okay.
I think it takes place in the 70s, and he is sort of charged with watching the kids over Christmas break. The 4 or 5 kids that for whatever reason they can't go home. And so they sort of have to stay at school for those 2 weeks, and sort of it's just them there. So it's a all around good drama about this sort of this family in quotes of these students, and sort of the caretaker and him spending the Christmas break and sort of becoming, forced to kind of become this de facto family over Christmas, and sort of you have a troubled student, and then you have Paul Giamatti who has his own background.
Hmm.
And I've heard it compared to Hal Hartley and some of the other films from the 70s. But just very well acted, well written, funny. I mean, this is classic Alexander Payne from
It is
like
more of a
Sideways and
comedy then it
Revolution.
sounds
Yeah,
like too.
yeah,
Which is probably a relief because when you go to the film festivals, the comedies are usually few and far between. So it's kind of nice to have something
yeah,
slightly lighter, right?
yeah.
So
It was, yeah. No, you're right. It was definitely one a welcome film to watch after watching all these really heavy, heavy, heavy films.
okay, and then tell me about your other one, The Teacher's Lounge, because
Teacher's
this was one of the
Lounge.
ones
This
I
is
wasn't as
a
familiar with.
German. Yeah, this is German film. This is I think I don't know how to pronounce the director's name. Ilker Katak. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, but this is sort of it takes place in this middle school where there's this sort of rash of robberies, just petty theft of the students' money. And they initially blame a Muslim student, which then just raises all kinds of issues of racism and classism, and sort of this. And a lot of the teachers sort of exhibit sort of these systemic ideas of racism and classism, and so she kind of has a goal of like calling her colleagues out on this,
Mm,
but then a lot of it backfires, and then a lot of the issues just ends up being a whole can of worms of she then suspects another teacher of she's the one that's actually stealing money, and so she makes a secret recording of like she leaves her wallet or her purse out in the open and try to make a secret recording to try to catch her. But then this ends up backfiring because then it's like an invasion of privacy. And so then it just ends up all these issues around race and class, and then office dynamics, and then you have power dynamics between teachers and students, and then the old guard teachers and the new teachers. It just all ends up just becoming sort of this big mess. The ending, I think, was a little, the way they resolved it was a little too easy, too
mm.
quick for me, considering all these issues that were coming up. But again, it does deal with a lot of these issues, like I said, race, class, power dynamics, in a very interesting, powerful way.
Now, the way you're describing it almost sounds like a dark comedy, but is it not a comedy? Is it a drama?
No, I mean it's mostly drama, but there's always some comedic elements, but it's mostly a
Mostly
drama,
drama. Okay.
you know.
Yeah. Well, those all sound really terrific. I'm curious which others, I mean, if there's any others you want to mention, or maybe it would also be interesting. What I always like to ask you is what film got a lot of buzz and maybe a lot of other people liked that you just thought, man, or was there one that you were just underwhelmed by that was maybe from a great director or someone you would have high hopes from?
There were so yeah, Saltburn, that's the new Emerald Fennell movie. She did Promising Young Woman, which I
Uh-huh.
wasn't a big fan of that film. This film was okay. Um there's a movie called All of Us Strangers. Andrew Haig directed. A lot of people really like that film.
Oh
It's
yeah,
sort
I
of a
saw a lot of good
gay,
reviews of that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
sort of a gay ghost story, combine a gay romance with a ghost story. I thought it was just okay. A lot of people were saying like it was fabulous and amazing. I was a little underwhelmed by that. At TIFF, I saw a movie called Memory. That's the new movie by Michel Franco. He's a Mexican director. He did a movie called New Order that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
The film was all I found it very problematic because it dealt with a man with Alzheimer's and his caregiver and them having a relationship. So very problematic. A lot of people thought it was romantic. I didn't think that at all. Um, yeah, I mean, we'll talk for hours.
Yeah, about those. But is there anything that you saw in the 1 minute we have left at Toronto that was almost as good? Right? 'Cause obviously, Perfect Days was a
Daddio.
fantastic
I
movie.
saw a movie called Daddio that played at Telluride.
Daddio.
I missed it at Telluride. That's Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn. It's basically the two of them, that two-hander, uh, talking on a cab ride that I thought was very fascinating. I think that got picked up. I'm not sure. I think Sony Pictures Classics will probably come out later next year, I think. So that's Daddio. I don't know the director of that. And then a film from Bhutan called The Monk and the Gun. The Monk and the Gun. The same filmmaker, he made Luana, A Yak in the Classroom, which was
Uh-huh,
a
which
kind of
got
a
huge reviews.
surprise
Yeah.
Oscar nominee a couple years ago. So that's his
Uh-huh.
newest one, The Monk and the Gun. I think Sony Pictures Classics also picked that up. So that will be coming up. That's a good uplifting, sort of very it's a moral tale about a monk and a gun.
I'm always relieved when I hear it's like A24 or Neon or Magnolia or even Sony Pictures Classics because like one of the things that irritates me is like when Netflix picks things up, I'm like, oh great, it won't get a theatrical, it will just die on like they did with Pablo Larraín, which you've seen, you've probably seen your
Yeah,
great film Spencer, which was your favorite film. They just
yeah,
threw his new film up on Netflix, no fanfare, nothing. It just plopped on there. Nobody's even seen it hardly, I think. So
yeah.
so glad to see studios picking up movies
One
again.
last one last film. It's an A24 called Dream Scenario. It's a Nick Cage movie. The Nicolas Cage Renaissance continues. Um, he's sort of this boring middle-aged guy, and for some weird reason, everyone starts having dreams about him. And he becomes
Okay.
like this minor celebrity because he's like the
He's in
most
everyone's
boring
dreams.
guy, and everyone
Yeah.
and he's in everyone's dream. And then
Well,
sort of all these consequences happen. So that dream scenario, A24 picked that up.
yeah. Well, everyone having dreams about Nicolas Cage doesn't seem too far fetched, actually, since he's everywhere these days. Well, thank you so much, as always, Ernie, for being on the show. As always, check out our reviews on our YouTube page. Subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and go to our website at realfilmsnobs.com. We're all over the place. I'm not going to list them all because we're behind time. Thank you, as always, to our wonderful sponsors and to Brad for taping the show. Thank you, of course, to Ernie for co hosting with me. Have a great day and great movies. Goodbye.